don't stop. Don't stop. Don't stop. Don't stop.
This is Andy Tube. In this video, I'm going to show you how to set the cam selector arm stops. That's what Singer calls this procedure, and I believe I'm going to do it on Trouble, the Singer model 401A I've been working on, but this should also apply to the Rocketeer 500A model. And they're talking the cam selector arm, which is a little confusing. This shaft from the selector knobs out the back of the body is the cam selector arm shaft. So I would say we're going to set the stops on the cam selector arm shaft. And the reason that you may need to do this is if you know that you push in this front button to turn the knob, or you pull the back button towards you to sometimes turn, there we go, turn the other knob, and in doing so, when you're making your letter selection, you're raising up a lifter that lifts the follower that follows along the disc or cam. And if your stop appears, say, to pull, let's work on the front one first. So when you pull this to change, you pull it out until it stops, then you can move it up and down, right? Well, one of the things that happens that this lifter, if you remember, it has what I called the floating finger here, that can also be called the lock arm. It goes through the slot and in of the follower and into a slot of the index pin, and that's what locks it. So when you're pulling this out, see how that floating finger or locking arm comes out. So you're pulling it out of the slot so you can move it up and down. Well, if you didn't have the stop set, you could pull that clear out of the slot. And you don't want that, because then you can't control your follower anymore. And by the same token, pushing this one back, if it didn't have a right setting, it could come out the back. The other thing, if the travel was not far enough, see if I can get a little closer here, like a little better view of this. Maybe like this, so I don't have to hold the tripod. So when you're pulling this is coming out to clear the slot on the index pin. If the stop was off and didn't let you pull it far enough, you might get it partially out, but then not enough to clear the slot, and it would still be kind of locked. You've got to get it out enough to clear the slot so you can move it. Okay. Now the other thing, I didn't talk too much. I mentioned this part of the follower kind of in passing, but this little raised arm here, this is part of the follower. Well, you see how the front part of the lifter holds the locking arm, but this back part comes around behind this little raised arm of the follower. And that purpose is for when you pull this, the follower swivels. See how the follower in here? And that pulls the tip away from the cam stack. So you got this action going up front that's very easy to see when you're looking in here. But it's also using this arm to swivel or hinge the follower away from the cam stack. And if your stop isn't enough, this is the tricky part sometimes, it might be adjusted by somebody looking here and saying, I have to adjust this to get this out enough to move. So it could be adjusted to be able to move the follower, but not allow enough travel to move that follower far enough away from the cam stack. And you can have follower drag when you're moving. That little follower tip can kind of bounce off the different cams. So we don't want the pull to be too far and end up getting this out, but it has to be far enough to get the follower tip clear of the cam stack. I hope that made sense. So I talked about them. Let me show you the front stop here. Okay, it's this piece right here. There's a screw that holds it to the body that is through the front of the machine behind the rear knob. So yes, you have to take both knobs off if you want to install that or remove it. But you don't need to do that if you're just going to adjust it. It consists of this screw that goes in, then it has a tube like with a washer attached that sticks up off the tube, and then it has a cylinder that goes around with a set screw. So if you loosen the set screw, the stop can be moved forward or back on the screw. And then the set screw retightened. And the way that it actually does the stopping is the heel of the lifter down here. Let me turn it up so you can see it. The heel of this stops against that little washer part of the front stop. Okay, so how do you go about setting? Where do you set the stop so that your locking arm comes out enough without falling out and your follower pulls far enough away? And the way that you actually set the stop at the right place is by using a feeler gauge to measure the difference, measure the space between this right-sided tip of the follower and one of the discs on the cam stack. Now, the only thing that's not real exciting about this is it's not like the top cam stack you get to use, it's the very bottom one. It's the bottom disc on here. Cam or disc number 1, the zigzag disc, is where this is placed so that you can use a feeler gauge between disc number 1 and the tip of this and set it to a certain point. Okay? And it's way down. So what you do is you come to your back knob and you pull it forward and you turn it to L. Yep. And make sure that it locks in. Okay? Right? Now, by moving that knob to L, you should be lowering that follower all the way down against disc 1. And disc 1 is the zigzag, and it just has these little flat nubs that stick out to make the follower go in and out like a zigzag. And you have to turn your hand wheel towards you so that the tip of the follower is settled on one of the high points of the disc 1, the zigzag disc. Okay, so if you think about it, it makes sense. The follower has to have clearance for every disc on here. So if you go to the highest point on the zigzag disc, that's the most clearance you need to move the follower up and down the cam stack. So that's why you're using disc 1. Right? So we get down there and we have that set up. Now, what is the clearance or the space that you need? And let's see if I can get this in the light good. It has to be between 0.010 to 0.012 inch, or it has to be someplace between 25 and 30 millimeters. According to Singer, any of this settings is okay. And I wonder, why did they make these stops? Why didn't they just make it, you know, so when it was assembled everything was perfect? And the only thing I'm thinking, I don't know if they accounted like maybe over the years parts would get worn. You have the metal follower traveling on the metal disc, and maybe it wears down a tiny bit, might need adjusted, or you know, you're in a very hot climate and all the metal parts expand and you don't have enough clearance to raise this up, or you're in a cold climate. I don't know why they made it, but you know, you can adjust the pressure bar height and the needle bar height and other things, so I guess that's why. So when you put your disc on L and you turn your hand wheel to be sure that that follower is on the high point of the zigzag disc, right in the middle. There we go. That's where I got mine. Then you want a minimum of 10, right? Now what you have to do, this is a little tricky, is you have to pull this out to whatever your stop is, and you have to hold it there, but don't turn it up and down or you won't be against that zigzag. So you just have to kind of pull it straight out and hold it and see if your feeler gauge will slip in there. And you know, a little bit of drag on a feeler gauge is what you want. And I can't seem to get mine in, and that's the closest it should be. That's the minimum, and I'm not getting it in there. Now I could force it in because this paddle is spring loaded, right? I mean, I could just shove it down in there probably there and say, oh, but to do that I'm pushing this back minutely. And look, the difference of these three is a very minute difference. From 0.010 to 0.012 inch is a tiny space. Okay, so this part is good. My stop is adjusted okay for it because I can freely move this down. But when I was working on stuff before, sometimes I would feel I thought maybe this was adjusted too close, but it's not. I think my stop is adjusted too short. I think it needs to go just a tiny bit more so the lock will stay in, but I get at least 10 or maybe the 0.011 clearance in here, so I'm not dragging on, depending on where the cam stack is turned at the time, and I tried to raise it, I would be catching on some of the other discs, you know. And I thought, man, what's going on here? Loosen our set screw on the stop. Give it a turn, that ought to do it. Okay, maybe this will work, because you can see the stop, and let me move that over. You can kind of see the follower there. So I'm going to stick this 0.011 down in here, and I'm just going to pull that out to the where the stop was. See, and I can't get it in there, so I've got to nudge this stop back. Now remember, it's a very, depending on how clean your stop is, it's a very tiny amount, and it should be pretty easy to move. Let's see if that changed anything. Okay, I'm not losing my finger thing here. That came out a little bit. So let's see if that tiny bit is enough. Oh, there we go. Gotta make sure I got it. I got the 11. I couldn't get to 10. Now I have the 11. I just set it in there like that. It feels pretty good too. I got a little drag on both sides. The trick here is to hold your blade straight up and down against that high point of the #1 cam. And you want to feel a little drag on both sides of it, right? Okay, so I think I'm at 11 now. So I want to go back here, and I'm going to tighten my set screw to hold the front stop at that position. And then of course I'll test it to see if I got it right. Nice. Yeah, I'll take that. So my little, oops, change hands here. My little locking arm, I see, does come out a tiny bit more. It's hard to tell, but it doesn't, pulling as hard as I can, it doesn't pop out of the follower. But now I can go top to bottom without kind of dragging on some of those. Let me just spin it around. Where's that one that here? I always seem to catch on this second disc from the top right there. There. So I've readjusted the front stop to give me a little bit more normal clearance of the follower without being able to pull the floating finger or little locking arm out. Yeah, that's much better. Okay, so I'm going to just put that back on K, and let me come over here now. I want to show you where the rear, you know, the rear follower is right down here. And I want to do the same kind of thing where it has to push back enough to clear the all the discs in here, right? and it does. But what I had a couple times while working on it was I push it back, and actually you can kind of see a scrape where the hinge screw has been scraping back here, and this thing would pop out. Oh, what a headache. So this one is too far away. I need to adjust the stop maybe closer. I don't know. I have done a lot of changes, so let's see. For this one, you push and you put it on D. Okay. And that should, if your machines and cam stack and everything is good, that should put the follower up on the bottom disc, the zigzag disc. And then we'd rotate. Am I on D? Oh, no, I wasn't there. Let me get D. I don't think I'm locked in here. Change it up and down. See, that's kind of there. Now, did my finger lock in this time? Yes, it's all the way in. And I'm on D. So now I should be on this bottom disc, and I should be able to set it on the tip of a high spot on that bottom zigzag disc. So it's harder to see this one on the camera, but there's my rear follower. Get my big thumb out of the way. There's my rear follower, and it's on the high point of the bottom disc. Okay, that's what it's supposed to be. So let's take my number 11, and I'm going to push the knob in without turning it and see if I can get my oh man, this is worse. See, I kind of fooled around with this because I was tired of this falling out. So I kind of changed the stop, and I just eyeballed it, and I did so poorly eyeballing it that I can't get the number 11 in there. So anyway, I couldn't get I know I'm in trouble because I can't get my number 11 in there. And that's what I'm looking for. So let me reset this up to D, lock it in, get it on the center point, and let me show you this rear stop. In earlier videos, I called this little part that goes through the body for the shaft to come out so you can screw it on. I called it the bushing, right? The shaft, the bushing, because the shaft goes through it. But if you notice, the shaft gets smaller here. It steps down after the lifter. And then that's so it can go in the smaller diameter bushing. Well, it turns out Singer says this is a stop bushing. And when this larger circumference of the shaft hits that bushing, it stops. You see that? Stop bushing. See the shaft come out the back. Let me make sure I got this tight. So that explains the set screw on the top, right? That set screw is to hold the bushing, stop bushing, wherever you set it to stop the shaft movement in the proper place. Let me show you. Here's a stop bushing, I took out of a parts box. You see, it's kind of got this recessed area there, and it's got some marks on it from the set screw, but that's what the, it's just like a little ferrule, you know, it's just the bushing, but it's adjustable and it's made to stop. And that pops right out. If you want to get it out to clean it, I just took this screw off the back, and then I used a wood stick to poke the stop bushing out the back. So on this one, what they say, and I haven't tried it. You see where I have the stop bushing, but they say to loosen the set screw and to push that bushing back towards the back of the machine. Give that a good turn until the back of the stop bushing hits this screw. And of course the screw should be all in. So you're not pushing anything for this, right? What they're saying is that you push this bushing in till it hits, whoops, I think I got to loosen this a little bit more, until it hits that screw in the back, and that's the setting. So I'm like, whoa, if that's true, they make it sound like that is the adjustment, period. If that's true, it's pretty easy. But maybe they mean that's the starting point, and then you move it forward. So let's see if I can put a little wood stick here and push that there. So it did go back a little bit. So the back of the bushing is hitting the inside front of this screw. And I did see it move back. So let me tighten that up. And then I'll check my setting. Oh, it travels a little more. And I'll put it on D. I'm on D. And I'll look down in here. I don't know if I could show you better from the back. Oh, there, over the top. So there is my rear follower. And I'll adjust my hand wheel so it's sitting right on the high point. Now I'm going to push in the front knob and see if my locking arm falls out. No. Okay. Before it was going clear to the back wall, this hinge screw. So let me put it against my new stop. Oh, I got plenty of room there. Okay, good. Now, does it go back far enough that I can raise and lower? Yes, I can. Still dragging a little bit. I got my selector knob locked into D, my locking finger's in, but I'm still having a problem here. When I'm pushing back on this, it's not swinging, hitting this arm. It's not moving that, oh gosh, I just pulled there. It's not moving the follower away. It's not moving it. There, now it's moving it a little bit. Oh, it's moving it because I turned it back off of D again. Remember I told you when you push it in, try not to turn it, because you won't be on the high point of the bottom disc anymore, which is exactly what I did. So let me get it back on there. There, locked in on the high point. Okay, I'll quit playing around and just do the measurement. So I'm going to push in my knob without turning it, but I know it's no good because look, I can't get the I cannot get the .011 in there. Oops, I moved it again. Get it back on D. So I think this stop has to go back farther. I think this has to travel a little more. And I've got space before. I think somebody had the same problem, and that's how that got scratched. Maybe I didn't push it all the way back to the screw. Let me unloosen it a little more. Maybe I didn't get it pushed back. According to them, you push this back until it hits the screw. Let's look at the back side. Can I do that? Maybe this way. Let me push there. See how it's pushing the screw out, and I can see it. So it's touching the back of the screw, and the screw is in tight. So that's as far back as it'll go. According to their adjustment, you know, their instructions. So I'm going to tighten it there. Maybe I didn't quite have it all the way. Let me tighten it up and we'll check the clearance again. Okay, I think I had it all the way back before, because I definitely have it touching the screw, but look, it's still not hitting the arm on the follower to move the follower away from the cam stack down in there. See how it's not moving? Now if I move it up to a different disc, it works, but that's the high point, and I have trouble keeping it on that bottom disc because I can't, the stop isn't letting me push this knob back far enough to get good clearance. So I think I'm going to have to move the bushing, stop bushing, farther towards the back. Even if it sticks out, it makes that little screw stick out. I'll have to look at my before pictures. I didn't really pay any attention to that. So I don't know how far. Maybe I should get it set up and put my feeler gauge down in there. So see, I'm on 4. What if I kind of pull this back and oops, put my feeler gauge down in there at 11 and just kind of let the spring hold it in place. And so I'm pushing back against that, and then if I push this forward a tiny bit so that it's even the screws sticking out and the tip of the bushing is kind of showing there. Whoops, I should have used my other hand, because now I want to tighten that set screw. Okay, so now I should have more travel on the stop. Oh, look at that. See how it became loose? Make sure I'm on D. Get it off of D. Let me get this out of here for a minute. There. Now I'm hitting, the stop is still working. I'm hitting the stop washer. Let me get this up. Now I see that my lifter is pushing back on the follower arm. See that? But how far? Let's see. I know my 11 is going to be, yeah, that's, I think I got it past, it's past 11. Let's see if 12 works good. If it does, I'm going to leave it right there. Okay, I'm on the bottom. I got it all pushed back. Oh, I can feel drag on my 12. Wow, did I get lucky? I just feel a little drag on my 12. So I don't think I'm over the 12. And I still have room back here behind my screw. I'm not hitting the back of the body. So I got lucky where I moved it. I think I moved it to 12, and that's okay for me if everything works, because it's in the specs. So I'm going to push in this front knob. Whoops. I should cut that off, but I'm afraid sometimes I use it and then I'll drop the camera. So I'm on D, right? I'm going to push this straight in without turning it. What I want to see is, does that finger fall out? No, it's in there. Good. And I can see that the lifter now hits that arm. And it's moving. You can see the paddle move a little, right? As the follower pushes back. See that little movement? So let's see if I can turn this knob easier now without dragging. Look at that. See, before it would, if I was down on like A, which is not sitting on any disc, because that's a straight stitch setting, and when I would try to go up to the D, if the high point of that first disc was in the way, I'd always get hung up there. And then I would get hung up on the lift of this one too, if I was going up. So let me put that sticking out there. But my understanding is, if you set it to the bottom cam stack cam disc 1 zigzag, and you set it to clear that, it's going to clear everything above it. There it goes. Goes right up before, like when you time the cam stack. Okay, good. So that is setting the cam selector arm shaft stops. The tube with the washer here to stop the back of the heel of the lifter. When I have this one at 11, and then the stop bushing, so when I push in the front knob, it moves that cam back, and I would say it's more like a 12. And then let's see where this, let's see how much this back screw sticks out here. See if I can get a good shot of that. It does stick out past the body, but just like just a fingernail's width, just barely. Because I can feel it if I go along the body. When I hit it, I can feel it. So it's just barely out the back of the machine. It's not really noticeable. But now my stop is back, and my locking finger works, and I'm just kind of still incredible that let me put the red lever in 3 where it sits most of the time, that I just feel lucky I hit that 12. Yeah. Okay, and it's not dragging back there. Okay, a lucky break. Thank you. So, that convoluted video was how to set the 2 stops on the cam selector arm, or earlier they called it arm shaft. The stop bushing and the little stop washer screw combination thing up front. Da-da-da. Okay, how'd you like that one? Huh. Working on these reminds me of why I like the 403. Just a few things to set in there and you can put 22 different cams. I know this will probably make like 80 different patterns, you know. So, if you're into that, and that's the way you craft, this is the machine to do it with. Thanks for tuning in. I'll make another one when I can, and I hope you'll come back and see it whenever I do. Take care.
Stop.